Access to water and sanitation is one of the most urgent development issues. Providing clean water and sanitation for everyone requires global action on all levels. But how bad is it? What are the actions needed? And did the UN Water Conference earlier this year provide any clues or any promising developments? This is SIWI Corner at World Water Week 2023. My name is Andreas Karlsson, and joining me on stage today, I have in the middle Alejandro Jimenez and then Danny Gaillard-Pichet from Stockholm International Water Institute. And also joining me, Paul Strong, 33 buckets, and also a junior rapporteur at World Water Week this year. Now, Alejandro, if I may start with you, can you please help us paint the picture a bit? So, what is the state of the access to water and sanitation in the world?
Thank you, Andreas. Well, the situation is not as good as it should be. As we have the recent data, we have 25% of the population that lack access to safely managed water, and 40% of the population that lack access to safely managed sanitation. And this is in average. Then within countries, you have also huge disparities, and also there are countries that are really lagging behind in terms of access with extremely low level of good coverage, and where others are a little bit worse off. But then that means that we have to do really better and faster and in a more sustainable way, because we also see that there is a big problem with sustainability and durability of the services. So actually, we have a lot to do.
We have a lot to do. And as you mentioned, there are a lot of differences, obviously, if you look at this on a global scale. What are the sort of most apparent lines you see? I mean, what are the differences?
Well, I think one important difference is between urban and rural. Urban access is, in general terms, better than for the people living in rural areas. But within urban, we also have to have the caution about the informal settlements, slums, or other parts of the cities that are not having adequate access to services in general, and sometimes are also absent from the statistics because of the lack of data and recognition of certain population living in certain parts. So that is one line. But another very important line, I would like to say, it's about the countries that are considered fragile. Because what we are seeing is that if in general there should be an acceleration of 4 times, 5 times as quicker as we should be working to achieve the SDG in average, if we talk about a fragile country, we're talking about 23 times faster. That means that we are not being able to really secure access at any speed in countries where there is this situation. And that is extremely worrying because the gap is widening between these countries and the others.
And what is the relationship between access to water and sanitation and health?
Well, I think here most of us would agree that trying to imagine a day without water or sanitation is going to have severe consequences on us, on our well-being, on our dignity, but of course on our health. It is estimated now, according to the recent data, that 8% of all the under 5 mortalities attributable to poor wash or lack of water, sanitation, and hygiene. So, and that means that overall, it's over 1.5 million deaths per year that we could prevent if everyone would have access to wash. And that is only, let's say, only the deaths, but there's also the diseases that do not cause death, diarrhea, sometimes other kinds of infections that then put people in difficult situations to work and certainly reduce well-being, let alone aspects of dignity, for example, if we don't have even access to basic sanitation.
Paul, I introduced you, you're very much a practitioner in this. I introduced you as representing the NGO 33 Buckets, of which you're a founder, and now acting as your board member now. Can you tell us what is 33 Buckets?
Yes. Hi, everyone. as Andreas introduced, my name is Paul Strong. I'm a master's student at the University of Arizona and co-founder and formerly served as executive director of a small NGO called 33 Buckets. I'm now a board member. 33 Buckets is an NGO that is working primarily in rural Peru to work with small underserved communities to improve sustainable access to clean water. What we primarily do is we work with chlorination. So chlorination is the most common water treatment method used in communities. We found that, and I'll go into this more kind of in your follow-up questions, but we help them improve their chlorination solutions. We also do community training for community water managers and wash education programs in schools. 33 Buckets actually started as a class project when I was an undergrad at Arizona State University. I almost said University of Arizona there. That was the rival school. That would be bad, which I'm going to now. We started as a class project. We were just a group of 5 19-year-old engineering students who really didn't know anything about anything, but we wanted to do something that would make a difference in the world. So we had the opportunity to join a project that was being led by a partner of the engineering program and an alumnus of the engineering school. He was actually from Bangladesh and had founded a girls' school in his hometown. They were experiencing issues with water, and we had the opportunity to work with him and work with the school to travel to Bangladesh and help implement a solution for safe drinking water. One of the things we really learned in that work was, we, having started out in an engineering-focused program, we were very much doing the kind of, okay, come up with a technical solution and present your idea and win funding, and we kind of did those competitions. When we actually got a little more experience, the more we worked with the community and were able to spend time on the ground, we saw that it's the technical solution is really not the most important part of ensuring sustainable access to safe water. We found that in fact, the technical solutions that this community needed or this school needed were already available in the country. Mm-hmm. What was lacking was the resources and the training to bring what was needed to where it was needed.
Yeah. We should perhaps mention very quickly, because they also said that you're a junior rapporteur at this year's World Water Week, and very briefly, what does that mean?
Yeah, so our team of junior rapporteurs were a group from all over the world of young professionals and students who are passionate about water. What we really do is we're attending the various sessions at World Water Week. We're observing the talks there and looking to identify what are the concrete actions that come out of those talks so we can summarize them, present them in a report, and help provide people who attended and people who, maybe organizations who didn't make it, the opportunity to see, to really see the solutions that have been, the ideas that have been generated and what might work for them and help them to achieve their goals and the needs of their communities.
Danny, earlier this year there was, as I said in the introduction, there was a big conference in New York, the UN Water Conference, much anticipated. Wasn't only about WASH, it was about many things relating to water. What was so special about that conference?
Well, excuse me. First of all, it was the first time in 46 years that the UN had actually hosted a conference that was focused on water. So it was historic to begin with. 11,000 people came. It was more than any other conference, I think, in the history of the UN. So that alone made it worthwhile. But then, in addition, there were a lot of, there was a formal program, but there was also an informal program with side events and lots of cross-pollination between these conversations. So it was a good platform for collective action. And then there was, for example, the suggestion that there be a UN envoy named by the Secretary General who could be the figurehead for water within the UN and outside of the UN system. And then finally, there was the Water Action Agenda, which is a collection of over 800 commitments for action on water. And so it's a place that you can go and you see what's happening and you also see what's not happening. And so I think what's really important is it enables us to come together and to create partnerships, because the partnerships is really going to be the key to unlocking progress in the future. So this collective action, coming together, doing things together, will bring us the next step as we go towards the SDG Summit, the Food Day, COP, the World Water Forum, the HLPF for next, high-level political forum for next year, and do this on a continual basis so that we work together hand in hand over time.
And I mean, like I said, the expectations ahead of the conference in New York, they were obviously very, very high. And the outcomes that you described, do you think that they relate to the expectations? Or do you think that the outcomes were as you would have wanted them to be?
So I generally tend to be a very positive person. I like to see the glasses half full. So obviously we could have done more. We could have generated higher level political commitment and attention. But I think what we did was tremendous. And I see that it is paving the way to move forward even more ambitiously in the future.
And you mentioned, and there was a whole lot of commitments collected from participants all around the world, countries and other actors as well. Can you describe the significance of that, collecting those commitments?
My feeling is that there is no other place where you can have a snapshot of all the water action that's happening at a moment in time across the world. So I find it's extremely valuable. You know, you could say, well, those commitments are things that are happening anyway. It didn't really add much. I beg to differ, because I really think that it gives you an idea for good practices that are happening around the world that we can actually then connect the dots, bring people together in smaller communities of practice to learn from each other and to scale up and to bring those to other arenas.
So how should the commitments be understood? As something that will now start implementing, or?
So the nature of these commitments they are voluntary commitments, and the people who have put them forward have the responsibility for delivering on them. Whether or not there is a monitoring mechanism or a follow-up mechanism, these are things that they have determined are important to do and that they have the intention of doing, whether or not it is part of a formal process or not. I think what we really need to do is to enable the Water Action Agenda to deliver or to provide a framework for those people to do what they said that they're going to do, whether it be financial support, capacity building, platforms for communication, but trust that they're going to do what they say they're going to do and give them the tools to do it.
And you mentioned a water envoy. Why is that important?
I think it's important from the political standpoint to be able to have a voice that can be consistent and that can get others convinced of the need to put water at the highest possible political, at the highest political levels and at the top of the agenda, whether it be at the heads of state level or within other sectors. And again, I think this multi-stakeholder action, the cooperation of different people coming together but focused on the same goal, I think that's really, really important.
And what kind of person would you like to see on that post?
There have been discussions that it would be wonderful to see a woman. There are also suggestions that it would be wonderful that come from the Global South.
There are suggestions.
Well, there are people who would like to see a woman from the Global South as the envoy. Whether that is feasible in the short term is yet to be seen, but that could be a stepwise process as well.
Yeah. Alejandra, you were also in New York. Are you as positive and happy with the outcomes?
No. I have to say no. Yeah, because I think Danny mentioned very well, there was quite a lot of good achievements out of the conference, and particularly the whole positioning in the UN system, the envoy, that we will not have to wait, hopefully 45 or 46 years for the next conference or high-level dialogue between the countries on water issues. That is all very good. So we have to acknowledge that, and the water action agenda and all the commitments that were written there. However, from my perspective, I think there was also a part of missed opportunity in terms of the ambition of what was there, and also ambition at the country level. We have just discussed a few minutes ago what is the current situation and how much more needs to be done. So from my perspective, we cannot forget that all this is just a means to an end. And that end is having the people with water and sanitation. And I saw far less of that I would have wanted. So that is a little bit...
Did you see anything?
Yes, of course. I think Danny mentioned many things, many positive things. And now there is all the analysis about the commitments, and I'm sure there are very good commitments in there, and some that are potentially transformative if they are scaled up. But we have to not to lose sight of what our goal is.
And how would you, I mean, as Paul spoke about earlier, how would you describe the challenges that lies ahead in terms of providing global access to water and sanitation?
Well, there is a matter, of course, of political prioritization, number one. There is, in addition to that, to then put the means to make access possible. And that speaks about financing, but not only. It speaks about the whole governance. We're speaking about the policies, about the plans, about the regulations, about the rule of law, about the capacity to attract investments, about having the service delivery models, about having the technical assistance to the rural communities having access. So all these pieces are partially there. You have to make them better, integrated, and be serious about wanting to reach the last mile, which unfortunately in some countries not at all the last mile, is perhaps over half of the population that still are suffering without access.
And say something, we heard Paul speak about the sort of work on the ground with 33 buckets, and say something about how SIWI is working with these issues.
Well, SIWI is focusing mostly on on these governance aspects. That is where we stand. We provide advice and support to either governments at the different levels, but also partners. SIWI is not aimed to be in every place, so we work with international partners, a lot with UN organizations, UNICEF, UNDP, and others, as well as multilateral organizations that have permanent presence in the countries and have constant dialogue with the governments at the different levels, and then how we can improve all these elements that I was mentioning from the governance perspective to be more efficient and better aligned into service delivery. We don't go to the communities and do direct service delivery. We try to facilitate that the enabling environment is in place so that service is possible and sustainable.
And you mentioned earlier, but the lack of political will is a key aspect of this, of course.
Of course, but there, I mean, the UN conference is a good sign. Commitments that are happening. Today or yesterday there was this launch of a head of states initiative about WASH. There is a movement about building presidential compacts where the prime minister and president sign off to put water up in the national political agenda. We have international commitments in the different conferences, both regional and global. So we are trying to push, but we have to sustain as well this political commitment and declarations across the years, because delivering water services and sanitation services is not a quick fix, and it requires sustained investment, and you have to do the things right for a long term. And that is very important to bear in mind and keep pushing.
And keep pushing. Important.
Exactly.
Yeah. Paul, I will not ask you to comment on the UN Water Conference. I know you were not participating, but you've seen the context that many of these commitments relate to, etc. If you were in a position to tell the world leaders what to do within this field, what would that be?
Yeah, so I would say, and first off to Alejandro's point about the last mile, in my experience on the ground and working in Peru, I've seen that, and it's the case in my home state in Arizona too. There are so many agencies, organizations, NGOs, at the national and state and local level that all may have missions or mandates to work on water issues to some degree or another. But what I've really seen and where I've seen water issues come from is, there's a disconnect between, these different agencies where they are and, and local communities and users, to the people who are really experiencing the problem. So I think, as far as what I would say to world leaders, to those who are, who are really responsible for setting the culture of their organizations and leading, to really have a bias for action. So, it's great that we come together and, we talk and we have discussions about innovating, reimagining things, doing things a new way in water. But then going forward, is what we talk about actually going to go the last mile and get to those communities? Is what we talk about applicable to the real situations and challenges that people face on the ground? And are we spending time in those communities to actually understand what the challenges are? Because people experiencing water issues are going to have the best knowledge of the issues. It may not always be that people have technical expertise, and that's, I believe, is the space for organizations and NGOs to serve as partners and provide the resources that communities may not have.
And what role do you say that young people play in this? I mean, I know that you said when we spoke earlier that not even being aware that WASH is the field that you can work within was something that struck you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and one thing I would say with world leaders is really engage young people. And where I am, being on a college campus again, having gone back to school a year ago for my studies, I see there are so many young people who are looking for something meaningful to do. They want to do something fulfilling. They want to be part of something that's greater than themselves, that's making an impact in the world. And they really don't know how. They don't know the pathways into whatever field they might be passionate about, including WASH. As a student myself, when I came to college, I was 18, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life. I had just been told, okay, go to college, get a good job, and I wanted to do something. I wanted to do something I didn't hate, going into the office every day.
And what are your plans for the future?
Yeah, my plans are, so I have a year left in school.
Yeah.
And looking to continue working in WASH, so supporting 33 Buckets is our organization. So check out the work we're doing, 33buckets.org. So I want to keep supporting that, and keep working in the WASH field and trying to be the one who helps bridge the gap between between what we talk about and what we might discuss at a high level, and take that last mile to communities, working with them to really co-create the solutions and help solve water issues sustainably and permanently.
Danny, if I put you in the same position that I just did with Paul, I mean, if you could really tell the decision makers of this world what they should do in terms of water, what would that be? Think big.
So much. I just don't even know where to begin. I think one thing I would like to say is empower women. Women are solution holders, and they represent more than half of the planet. So if they're not involved in the solutions or in the decision making, then we're making a big mistake. Put water first. Water needs to be prioritized within their political agendas. Otherwise, we won't be able to achieve any of the sustainable development goals if we don't have water there first. And make sure that there is financing available. That is huge. And please fix the sanitation problem. Those are the 4 messages I would say.
I imagine that last point is something you can subscribe to Alejandro. What is your message to the political and perhaps also economical leaders of the world?
I think Danny made 4 very good points. Actually, and I would say also think long term. No? This is something that we have to solve for the well-being of our world, and it's way beyond your political turn, your short-term interests. So we have to get this right, because it's about achieving all the other SDGs. It's about well-being for all of us. So we have to be really serious about this and put it aside from the daily struggles and short-term interests and all that. We have to really discuss in terms of the governments and leave political sides aside, and let's talk water, and water is something that goes beyond all the other.
But saying that we have to, and then going to actually doing that, that seems to be a very, very difficult step to take. How can we do that?
Well, we need the will, no? And we need to push that will, and there have been good steps through the UN and the UN conference, and if that would be more regular and with envoy and more serious discussions and more of a global commitments about what we are going to do, so that all these things would help us as well to keep this political will on high, and then also not to put water as short-term political game thing, which is happening in many places, and also this is as well dangerous because it can also trigger conflict in terms of putting different water users against each other and so on.
Danny, quick final word.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I think that we all have part of the solution. So there's this concept called 1% solutions. And if we all are able to act within our own spheres of influence to make change happen, collectively we'll get there. So the idea to put these into smaller pieces, whether it be regional, whether it be thematic, and have coalitions of the willing that can work collectively on achieving those goals. I think those are the 1% solutions that we can end up accumulating for real change to happen.
Thank you all for joining us. This is SIWI Corner at World Water Week 2023. You can join us again tomorrow, same time, for another discussion. Thank you.